All right, boys, welcome in. We are live. Yes, the NBA season started in October 2019. Yes, the season was suspended on March 11th. It's been 4.5 months with no basketball, but we're 2 days away from the restart of the NBA season. So obviously the Rum Pure Bets crew wanted to reset the clock a little bit, put together an NBA preview for you guys for the shortened season. So we put together a rock-solid panel, man. I'm joined, obviously, by Keg handicappers Tyler Hicks, Spread Astaire. Tonight we have two special guests on the panel, a couple guys everybody knows from the Deep Dive podcast, Mr. Whale Capper, and obviously Wager Talk Skee Profit. Whale, Skee, how you guys doing, boys?
Couldn't be better. I appreciate you guys having me on. I feel like this is an all-star crew here. We're gonna get all the winners tonight.
I mean, that's the goal. Skee, what's going on, buddy?
I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be talking to you fellas, especially about NBA. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, man. March 11th must have been a tough day for you, huh?
Worst day of the year.
Tyler, Spread, I would ask you guys how you are, but unfortunately, I talk to you every single day of my life, and I always know how you are. So,
fortunately for you, talk to us.
That's right. That's right. Fortunately. All right. So quickly, before we dive in on some futures win totals for the shortened season, I want to first go around the room, get everybody's general thoughts about how you guys are going to approach the shortened season, basically, and the playoff run from a handicapping perspective. So I'll start with you, Whale. How are you going to approach the restart?
I have a couple plays that I felt like were information-based that turned out to be not so great because they're kind of making up some rules as they go along as far as who can be in the bubble and who can't be. And so as far as sides go, I don't know that there's a ton of value until we kind of see, a full 48 minutes out of the starters and see who's, kind of in true form. Because I would say the scrimmages so far have been like really, really high intensity, way higher than I expected. Like it's been fun as hell to watch. All the stars have been playing. And in general, it looks like everybody's in good shape. It looks like everybody's kind of pot committed that they are really taking this seriously, which is so different than what I originally thought, and expected when this got, when we were starting. So, I think I'm going to take a back seat on sides out of the gate, and I'm probably just going to try to pick some spots for totals until we get a better feel of form. As far as totals go, it's pretty clear that they are expecting a big time regression on either pace or offensive efficiency, which I don't know that I would agree with given what we've seen from the exhibition play, at least. Seems like some of the coaches, especially, I got a handful of coaches that I think are particularly trying to use these games to like run their guys in shape. Like the pace has been up at times with starters on the floor. And in general, it doesn't look like there's really any issues with unfamiliarity with the setting or the rims, like the shooters are shooting no problem. And if anything, just going to the same gyms day in, day out, maybe like they're getting relative, some pretty quick familiarity with that. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for some overs because the lines that they hung, they're, counting on about a 5%, 6% ish reduction in scoring, which I don't know is warranted.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? These guys have been raring to go for almost 4 months. So it makes sense that they're going to get out the run early. Let me ask you a question. How do you think no crowd noise or just no crowd in general affects these totals?
I would have thought it was going to be lower intensity defense in a vacuum. Like I feel like without the home crowd, to a degree, you're not going to be as aggressive defensively. That's what we've seen a little bit in soccer, and that's really kind of the only comp I can come up with. There may be absolutely no effect at all. If, like I said, that you have an advantage when you're playing at home for a bunch of reasons, right? Some of it is because you didn't travel and you slept in your bed and, everything was normal. Some of it is because, the crowd is getting you jacked up. Some of it is because the crowd is intimidating the refs. And all that is gone. And the part where maybe you are a little bit more familiar with your court setting, your rims, the way that the court plays in your home arena. Well, now you got to get used to a totally neutral one, and it's not ever going to change. So I think you are going to see a really high level of play. And a lot of these restart games don't have true they don't really mean anything other than kind of getting these guys in shape. And kind of bragging rights between the players. So I think we're going to see a pretty wide open pace of play.
Skee, what are you looking for early? We got 8 games before they start the playoff run. From a handicapping perspective, are you looking to lay off early? Do you take a couple days off, or are you looking to jump right in?
Well, I think we kind of know who these teams are. And I agree with Will. I like totals in general anyway, so I'm already looking towards the total side. I think that's easier to tell what's going to happen out the gate. But there are a few teams that I'm not sold on. There are a few teams that I think are going to make a push for it. So I'm going to bank on those teams that I'm confident in. The most important thing to me right now is chemistry. Teams that have the chemistry are the teams I want to bet on. Teams that don't have it, I'm not looking at them at all.
Yeah. That makes sense. Tyler, spread. You guys looking to hop right in early?
Yeah, at first I was a little nervous, but watching these scrimmages, it stayed true to form with a lot of the stuff that we saw before the shutdown happened. So I'm a little more confident. Originally wasn't thinking that my model was going to be of any use. After watching scrimmages, I think a lot of the things are the same, and I will be able to use the model to be able to find some edges and some sides. Whale made a great point about the unders. Not only did the bookmakers open them about 5% lower, but bettors bet them down. So we might have some advantage here for the overs. And to your question about how no crowd affects it, I think one thing that I didn't anticipate going into it that I learned from watching the scrimmage is how much the players can communicate with each other. And then also the coaches' instructions are being heard by everybody. Are some of the coaches going to be a little quieter on the sidelines because it's a little different when you're calling out plays and all 10 players can hear them rather than just your couple players that you're yelling to? So there will be some differences, but the scrimmages have made me more confident to come out firing right off the bat.
Tyler, you are the resident props guy. I know you're always looking at props before a side or total. You take the first couple of days off before you jump in, or do you think you're going to find some edges early?
I think the only edge you can find right off the bat would maybe be like rebounds. I wouldn't take up points because we're not sure how these guys are going to shoot. I mean, what Wells said, they're not real familiar with these courts, but them practicing on them for a couple weeks, some of these guys could come out shooting and it could be lights out. So we could find some early spots where we're just hammering props. The one spot I'm looking at early, though, is team total unders on these teams that are going to be playing, say, Memphis, the Pelicans, these teams that are trying to fight into the standings and fight for a playoff spot. Those are going to be the teams that are going to be coming out playing their best defense they have. They have to get that spot. Other than that, I'm just staying away from everything right now. Give it a few days, see what happens.
All right, so I guess we'll start in the Eastern Conference. Talk about a few Eastern Conference season win totals. But before we do, I'll start with Whale. Are there any Eastern Conference season win totals that you're targeting for the 8-game restart? I could not believe that they were actually offering 8-game season win totals. but I mean, yeah, the sports books, they'll suck blood out of a stone. So yeah. So are there any season win totals you think are actually worth a look? We'll talk about a few of them, but I just wanted to ask you if you targeted any.
Yeah, I got a couple of really nice early numbers. I don't know what they were thinking, but they opened Milwaukee 6.5, which is like they're going to go 7-1 or 8-0, and they're going to have the 1 seed locked up if they win their first 3 or 4 games. So I really have no idea why you're going to put your best players at risk down the stretch, and there's a bunch of meaningless games down the stretch for the Bucks. So the likelihood that they go 7-1 or 8-0 is pretty low, and it's gotten bet down to 6. I would still bet Milwaukee under 6. Like that's a worst case. That's a push in my book. I think realistically, by my numbers, I have a fair price. Fair price for them is 5.5. So if you're going to give me 6 at a reasonable juice, I'm in. I'm looking hard for like under a half win for the Wizards and the Nets. Those two rosters are really, really not looking good. I'm being somewhat tongue in cheek, but the unders on those two teams are very solid because they have to play some some teams that are playing for nothing. They could pick up some lucky wins, I guess, if a team like goes into sort of pseudo tank mode. But it is going to be very, very, very tough for them to be competitive. As you even saw with the Wizards yesterday against the Lakers, they were playing the Lakers' third squad. And they couldn't even stay within 7 points. So it was, those teams are kind of here for a vacation, as best I can tell you. Maybe they're developing their G League players, and best of luck to them. But I won't be backing those teams, and I think that the unders on those are pretty strong.
I'll tell you, I think Milwaukee, even at 6, is a great call because, like you said, what are you gaining, right? Other than getting back into shape, those last 8 games. When you basically all but locked up the 1 seed, right?
Yeah, I mean, you saw the way that they treated the 3 scrimmages, right? Like the first 2, they played, pretty meaningful complement of Giannis and, the starters. They played unbelievably good. Like they were so freaking good. I could not believe how good their offense looked, especially. And then sure enough, third scrimmage, we're mailing it in. Right, like that kind of has the same sort of feel for these 8 games, where I think you're going to see games 1 through 5. They'll give you a legit effort. They may go 4-1, but the last 3 games, you're gonna protect your assets for this playoff run there, because reasonably, even the their round 1 playoff series probably going to be against the Nets. That's only going to be a 4-game series in and of itself, so you don't really have to get your guys major minutes to get their legs under them, because number 1, they already look like they're all in great shape, and number 2, you're going to have another opportunity come that round 1 playoff series.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man. Even at 6, that I might pull the trigger on that. What about you, Skee? Have you pulled the trigger on any season win totals in the Eastern Conference before we go over a few?
I didn't pull the trigger, but if I'm looking at them, the most appealing one to me is probably Philadelphia. I think it was, I don't know if it was Tobias or one of the guys. They just said that they were missing chemistry all season long, and now that they finally have it, they're looking pretty good. So they're a regular season team in my eyes. I don't think they're going to do so well in the playoffs, but to finish out the season, I think they can get their win total. And like Will said, out on Brooklyn, out on Washington. I think we'll talk about a couple more here soon. So Philadelphia is the one that stands out.
To go what, over or under?
Over.
Okay. All right. I like it. Tyler, spread before we go over a few. And anything that you guys are pulling the trigger in the East on?
Yeah, I already played Philadelphia. Got great CLV there. I got it at 4.5. It's at 5 or 5.5 right now. Nice. I hit it right when it opened, Skee. And
nice.
Basically, I don't know how much I buy into this team, but other than New Orleans, I think they have the easiest schedule. And actually, my concern as a Philadelphia fan would be more that the team's not ready for the playoffs after going through that cupcake 8-game schedule and then having to ramp it up there in the first round. But I'm liking Philadelphia a lot for the little 8-game stretch.
All right. Tyler?
I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I was looking at the Magic over 3.5. Looking at their schedule, they got Brooklyn, Sacramento, Indiana, Toronto, Philly, Boston, Brooklyn, and the Pelicans. They should beat Brooklyn both times. They should beat Sacramento. That's 3 right there. Indy just lost Sabonis. They might pull that game off. And you look at the other teams they're playing, once they get to Boston in that last game, or even the Pelicans, which they finish up with, the Pelicans could be eliminated from the playoffs and not care about that game. Or you could have them playing the Pacers without one of their big men. They could win that game. Toronto could be locked into the 2 seed. They could be playing a meaningless game. They could steal that game there. They're trying to get out of that 8 spot and not have to play the Bucks. They want to move up a spot. I could definitely see them winning 4 out of them 8 games.
All right. Interesting look there. All right. So let's start with the Celtics. Currently, I think 3 games back of Toronto for the 2 seed. You would have to think that the Raptors will probably need to collapse if the Celtics plan on catching them, right? So, Skee, the current line sits 5.5 games, over plus 125 on DraftKings, under minus 165. So if you are a betting man, how do you see this play out? You lean over, under 5.5 for Boston?
5.5 is pretty high, and I know they play Washington and some of the worst teams like towards the end of the schedule, where I don't know, it may not matter as much. It may not matter as much at the end. So I would probably lean towards under. I don't think they really have that much to play for 6 games.
All right, so you lean under. Well, you would have to think the number one question for the Celtics would be what? How healthy is Kemba Walker, and will he make an impact right now? Right?
Yeah. No, I thought I was, in the time off, I was kind of entertaining. Hey, maybe the Celtics are a little frisky. They got a lot of depth. If somebody gets sick or hurt, like they seem to have some resilience. But Kemba looks like he has lost a lot of weight. I don't think he's played much. They're easing him back into the rotation very, very, very gently. I don't think he's going to be much of a contributing factor during the regular season. But that under was really juicy. What did you say the price was? Minus 1.
Yeah, minus 165 on DraftKings.
If you're going to go for an under, I'm shopping around and I'm looking for a flat 5 rather than laying that juice. I'm almost tempted to take over 5.5. What's the price on that? Plus something? Probably
plus 1.25. Yeah.
I don't know. They have so they start out with Milwaukee, which I think they're going to lose. They're not a great matchup from Milwaukee. At that point, your back is kind of against the wall. You need them to go 6-1. So I'm passing on that one. But if anything, I'm shopping around and trying to find under 5.
Under 5, up to what juice do you think is bettable?
I'm looking at my numbers right now. I would pay only up to about minus 110 if I could get a under 5. I think a half win is worth about 25 cents, and I have under 5.5. I would put under 5.5 at minus 130 personally, and I think maybe take about a quarter off for that half win. So I think fair price for under 5 is minus 105.
So if you can't get a 5, you actually you prefer taking a shot on the over, really, at plus 1.25 if you had to.
Yeah, but we're talking like I'm going to look real hard at their schedule and see if I can get some value out of like some spots where because they're 4.5, 5-point dogs to the Bucks. Well, game 1, you're to make that 5.5. You really need that game. Because that kind of impacts the whole kind of team mindset. Like, okay,
sure,
we're going to beat the Bucks. We're going for this. We're going to get that 2 seed. I think without that, the top, the 1, 2, 3 seeds in the East, I think stay put, and that kind of puts them all in the same boat as you wind down into the final games of the restart where they're not playing for much, and so then you're kind of talking about a coin flip.
Yeah. I mean, I like that look under 5. Tyler, do you agree with Whale? Like, would you not touch this 5.5 line? You'd be shopping for a 5.
Yeah, 100% agree with him. There's no way you can touch it at that juice. You just got to look for that 5 and see if you can find it. And looking at their schedule, I mean, just like he said, that Milwaukee game they'll need for that. They probably beat Portland. The Miami game's a toss-up. They beat Brooklyn. That'll be a very good game between them and Toronto because that'll be probably for that 2 seed. The Magic game, I mean, they should beat them, but if the Magic size comes into play there, they could win. They should beat Memphis, and they'll handle the Wizards in that last game. So, I mean, at the plus 125, if I had to pick a side on that number, I'm definitely taking the over. But I'd be hunting for that 5 if I could find it.
Sure. What do you think, Spread?
Yeah, I think the Celtics are a fascinating team. They have probably some of the best wing depth in the East there. Brad Stevens, great coach, getting the most out of his role players, and his out of the timeouts are some of the best play calls in the NBA, and that could come down to the difference between winning and losing a close game. But Kemba Walker is the big question mark here, and without knowing that he's fully healthy, if we're not getting quality minutes from him, they've had problems with point guard depth all year. I don't really like the offense running through necessarily Hayward or Smart's hands going against some of these better teams. So that's why I'm staying off. But I think as handicappers, we are going to be looking at Kemba Walker and his health in these first couple games, because if he does look to be fully healthy, they could be making some noise here in the playoffs. And if he's not healthy, they might be a fade and in line for to be upset in the first round. So a lot to take advantage, information to take advantage of here. And I'll be looking to Kemba's health to really see how I'm going to treat this team going into the playoffs.
All right. So we touched on the Philadelphia 76ers briefly, currently a 6 seed. In terms of seeding, I think their best shot at moving up the bracket would maybe be 4. They're 2 games behind the Heat for the 4 seed currently. Again, man, juicy win totals. Their season win total sits 5.5 right now, over plus 130, under minus 175. So, I mean, Tyler, what are your thoughts on the 76ers, heading into the restart, and are you pulling the trigger on a win total, or is this a complete pass?
It's a complete pass for me, unless you were spreading, you beat the line by a mile.
Sure.
I mean, that schedule's a cupcake.
Yeah.
They have Indiana, San Antonio, Washington, Orlando, Portland, Phoenix, Toronto, and then finish up with Houston. They could very easily go 6-2, 7-1. So I just think at that number, there's just no way to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I agree. At that number, it's crazy. Well, one question for the team you would think is chemistry, right? Ben Simmons moves to power forward for the first time in Philly. I think Milton now runs the point. So, like, how do you factor that in for anybody looking to bet the win total? I know you, so you probably aren't going to touch 5.5, obviously, right? So,
Yeah.
if you found a 5, right, what's bettable either way?
So I'm probably staying away from the Sixers altogether. I agree that the chemistry seems to be better, and that's fine as long as they're playing well and winning. But if the going gets tough, do they revert kind of to not really liking each other? It could go both ways in my opinion. So I'm more of a wait and see on that. Same with Ben Simmons at the power forward. Conceptually, love it. Conceptually, love that they're like trying something different, because obviously what they were doing wasn't working. But will it work is a different question. And so I'm mostly kind of using these 8 games to just kind of evaluate these guys for their playoff matchup, because, I have a lot of faith in the Bucks to come out of the East. But I'm kind of looking over my shoulder, like if anyone's going to spoil this, it could potentially be the Sixers. So I want to know kind of in detail the state of this team as they head into the playoffs. And, the schedule though does afford them the opportunity to get to 5 pretty comfortably. And they should reasonably be 6-2 or 7-1.
Yeah, Skee, obviously you said that you like the over. I know at 5, not 5.5. Spread, I know that you just destroyed the line, so you're good there. So we can move on. One more Eastern Conference win total. Miami Heat, 2.5 games back of Boston for the 3 seed. Realistically, you would have to think Boston needs to probably collapse in order for Miami to catch them, right? Their win total, it seems the most manageable of the teams that we've covered thus far. They would need to go 1 game over 500 in order to push their season win total over. I'm seeing 4.5 over plus 130, under minus 160 on DraftKings. Tyler, I'll start with you. Overall thoughts on Miami going into the restart first, and second, do you see an angle on the win total?
I mean, that team, for being a young team that everyone thought was going to be in the lottery at the beginning of the year, they really have been playing great ball. And if with that team total win at 4.5, and looking at that schedule, I mean, they have one of the toughest schedules coming into this 8 games. They're going to start with Denver, then Toronto, Boston, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Indiana, Oklahoma City, and finish up with Indiana. I mean, other than the 2 Indiana games and the Phoenix game, all them other games are going to be tough games for them. So, I mean, getting to 5-3 to cash that over, I don't think they get there. Could they, though? Yeah, they have Eric Spoelstra, who's one of the better coaches in the league. He'll have them guys ready to play.
All right, Skee, there were times when Miami was really profitable this season. We rode them on the live show, and they treated us pretty well. However, leadership has never really been Jimmy Butler's strong suit, right? So is Miami a team that can crumble during the restart, do you think? Or do you expect them to rise up through the adversity of the pandemic? Could they play over 500 ball in 8 games?
I think they can play over 500 ball. I mean, really simply, just looking at their schedule, the first 4 games are difficult. The last 4 are easy. I think they definitely win 4. It's a matter of if they win the 5th one. And I'm not sure what you said the price was. It was plus money.
Plus 130 on the
plus money price.
4.5.
Yeah, I think they could very easily. I mean, it's a tough game, but they can win one of the first 4 games. And I think the last 4 are very winnable. So I would go over the win total for Miami.
Yeah, well, I guess the question really is Jimmy Butler a true number 1 option that's capable of leading a team to a championship, right? With that said, do you think that you lean over? And we know that they're in the playoffs. What's your overall outlook on the Miami Heat going into the playoff run?
Well, this is tough to say because I think I had the most profitable season backing the Heat of any team in the NBA. So I'm a little soft spot they did really well for me. They played super hard. Spoelstra got the most out of these guys. They overachieved to a degree. But I think a lot of it was kind of based. I mean, I give a lot of credit to Bam Adebayo, who took a major step forward this year. And I have yet to see that he is of 100% healthy coming into this. So I'm buyer beware on the Heat for this restart specifically. I think I'm looking more at them, what can they add this offseason? Can they compete in 2021? I don't think that this is going to be an especially successful endeavor for them in Orlando. Without Bam, without Nunn, it's a relatively thin team. They have a decent starting 5 they can still throw out there, but their second unit's going to get run off the floor, and it's gonna be tough for Jimmy Butler to basically carry the offensive load pretty much by himself with some of the pieces that are going to be missing. So I'm buyer beware on the Heat as we head into the restart.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good point. What do you think, Fred?
Yeah, in spite of the people that Whale mentioned are missing, I still like the over for this team. I think in this 8-game situation, coaching is a huge advantage, and that's where Spoelstra is going to come through. Really like that aspect of the team. They're great defensively. So I like the over here a lot just because of Spoelstra and the fact that they're one of the best conditioned teams in the NBA, and I can count on their effort night in and night out. What I will be looking for when I'm going for the Heat in the playoffs is going to be the play of Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala. These are 2 pieces that are fairly big names to NBA handicappers, but we're not really sure at this age, are they going to be able to contribute the way they have in the past? Iguodala especially. At first, when he came to the team, he almost looked a little bit lost, but he started to settle in here. If he can be a defensive stopper, I think they can run a really tough small lineup, like the Warriors did with Iguodala out there, and I think they can really be tough for anybody. If these guys are starting to show their age and they're not able to defend one-on-one and we're kind of relying on them for the team defense aspect, I think it's going to be really tough for the Heat. So I do like them to go over just because of the coaching and the schedule. And I say, look to see how Crowder and Iguodala are fitting in with the team before you measure the Heat's playoff chances.
All right, I could not find any division winners, obviously. Only 22 teams, I think, are at the bubble, right? So I was able to find conference winning futures. Now, I am not an expert in the NBA personally, like the guys are here, but one would have to think that the NBA Finals goes through Milwaukee, right? As far as the East is concerned. So right now, the Bucks overwhelming favorite in the East, minus 150 to win the conference. So the question is there value to hop on those Bucks at minus 150? Do they have better than a 60% chance to win the East? Really, it would be the question, right? So if that line isn't a fair representation of their odds, are there any live dogs that you guys will be targeting in the Eastern Conference? I'll start with you, Spread. Are the Bucks a play at minus 150, or do you think the dogs are barking in the East?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably value on the Bucks at minus 150. I am not going to make the plunge personally, even though the numbers might say so. My 2 concerns are basically Budenholzer's coaching. I think that he's going to be outmatched in whoever reaches the Eastern Conference Finals, he'll probably be outmatched from a coaching standpoint. He's had a tendency to stick to his rotations, which makes him predictable to the opposing coaches. And I'm also worried about Giannis's ability to beat a zone when teams realize that they implement that, and that's the best way to beat him. So I'm a little worried there. I think a fun flyer, and we've talked about this team before, is Philadelphia, because I think from a talent perspective and a roster perspective, I think they have the same amount of talent as Milwaukee. They just haven't shown the results. But at plus 700, plus 750 to win the East, I think that's an interesting look there. Haven't pulled the trigger on either, but those are my two favorites coming out of the East.
Skee, can you push the button on Milwaukee at minus 150, or do you think there's a black sheep out there worth throwing some lunch money on? What do you think?
I'm not sold on the Bucks. The Raptors already showed how to beat the Bucks last year. Spread kind of hinted on it playing his own, but pretty much just take away the middle from Giannis and force everyone else to beat you. I'm not confident that Bledsoe can step up. I'm not really confident in Chris Middleton either. So it's the same Bucks squad, and I'm not sold on it. I will be looking to take a flyer on one of the plus prices. And I'm not sold necessarily on Philadelphia either, simply because, Brett Brown, I don't trust him at all with anything. And they look good on paper, but they haven't shown it, just like Spread said. So I will be looking more towards Boston is small, but I'll look towards, if Kemba's healthy, I think Boston can play with everybody. And I think Toronto has a shot. So I would look to take a flyer with one of those teams. I'm not sold on Indiana either.
Everybody's taking shots. Well, come on, bro. Is Milwaukee winning the East more than 6 out of 10 times?
Yeah, and I think they're winning it this year without losing more than 4 games.
So minus 150, you pushing the button on that?
I am. I would take them plus. I think fair. I'll go through the numbers real quick here. If worst case scenario, the Sixers get into the 4 or 5 matchup, beat the Heat, and your round 2 matchup is against the Sixers, and then you go and play either the Raptors or the Celtics. I have the Bucks coming out of that matchup to the tune of a fair price of minus 205. If the Sixers stay in the 6th seed, that jumps to about minus 250. All of this is now kind of just based on just general strength team versus team. But if you want to kind of break it down from a kind of a granular narrative standpoint, I agree with all the points these guys made. But Budenholzer is not my coach. Like, if I'm starting a franchise, if I want somebody to be able to reasonably navigate a 7-game playoff series, Budenholzer is not my guy. But Giannis is absolutely playing at another level. He is a devastating matchup for the Celtics. I do not see any way that the Celtics beat Giannis in a head-to-head series 4 games out of 7. The point about the Raptors is extremely fair. They put together a really solid blueprint about how you defend the Bucks last year in the playoff series. The problem is this year, the Raptors really do not have a go-to guy from a scoring standpoint in crunch time. I don't know what their play call is when, if it's a 1-possession game, in the Bucks in game 5, game 6, whatever. I don't have any confidence that they have a play to pull out to get the bucket that they need without the star power of Kawhi in crunch time last year could not be overstated. It was so important for them, and they're really missing that this year. And if you have Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry on the floor in crunch time, the Bucks can absolutely play away from those guys, invite them to go to the rim, play very sound defense, don't foul them, and dare those guys to beat you by finishing. They're just not going to do it, not against the height, not against the length that the Bucks have defensively. And so I think, maybe it would be a fun competitive series to see the Raptors go up against the Bucks. But I just can't see how they're going to get those crunch time wins. And then finally with the Sixers, yes, that is the one I'm a little concerned about because 5-on-5, that's a tough matchup for you. Joel Embiid is going to be, tough for them to defend. If they come up with some wrinkles that we haven't seen before, it's going to be tough for Budenholzer to adjust to on the fly. But the bench mob for the Sixers is a disaster. You are literally going to blink in the second quarter, and the second unit from the Bucks can hang 20 points on those guys and absolutely, make it. You have no margin for error for your starting 5. Because the Bucks' depth is just absolutely going to bury you when your guys are getting a break. So, maybe if you're playing Embiid 45 minutes a game and he doesn't break down, can you steal a couple of wins in a playoff series against the Bucks? Sure. But I really just don't see how you're going to be able to get away with doing that over the course of a 7-game series. And, Giannis is on another level. He's added elements to his game this year that we didn't see last year. You have to defend him differently. And so I'm not entirely sure that a zone scheme works for 7 games. So there's really a lot, I think, positive you can say about the Bucks' chances this year. Yes, they did lose home court advantage, which is not great for their overall chances. But they're so much better than everyone else in the East. I really find it hard that they're going to not put this away and punch their first ticket to the finals.
See, I think that you just nailed it, man. Because here's I'm the host. I'm not giving out plays, and I know we hit a ton of plus money on the live betting show. But I thought Milwaukee was an auto play for a dime at -150 to win the East, because it's what you said. Their bench is so deep, it could probably beat most starting fives in the East alone. So, I pushed the button on that personally. I'm with you. Tyler, Bucks -150, or you find value somewhere else?
Well sold. The Bucks perfect right there.
Yeah.
You're not picking them after that sales pitch, but I'm jumping in the boat with the other two guys. I still cannot trust Budenholzer. We've watched him do this before with a completely different team. Yes, it didn't have a player like Giannis, but he made them Hawks teams win 60 games. They got into the playoffs. They got blasted. I don't see Milwaukee getting blasted because there's not a team out there to do it. But I could see Toronto. They still have size. They could build that wall right in the middle. And all it takes is one of them guys getting hot and making shots. I think they can steal the Eastern Conference at 7-1. And even Miami at 10-1. If they get healthy, Spoelstra can coach them guys. And if they overachieve, they'll definitely be right there.
How dare you? How dare the Bucks get no respect? I don't even know what I'm listening to right now. All right. What do you think, Spread? Hit me with it.
Yeah, the value is probably there mathematically. It's just the eyeball test. I'm a little worried that if I can figure out that, you jam the middle and you use the zone to go ahead and stop Giannis. Of course, these NBA coaches can. And I think we have 3 teams that have the personnel to do it. So it's going to be if you do slow down Giannis, are you going to be able to score to take advantage of it? And I think Philadelphia, Toronto, and Miami all have that. Boston is a flyer. If Kemba's healthy, I think so too. But really, because of their lack of size, I think that's a terrible matchup for them. But I think Toronto, Philadelphia, and Miami all are going to give the Bucks problems, and these are going to be some great series for us to look forward to.
I'll tell you what. Well, me and you are on an island, bro, because the chat is fade city on Milwaukee to win the East.
Wow. Okay, that's great news. I guess you don't win money in sports betting by beating the bookmaker. That's a weird myth that people perpetuate. You make money by taking it from the other bettors in the market. And so if there's a bunch of people out there with an appetite to fade the Milwaukee Bucks, then that's how the game works. I'm not even done making my Bucks case yet. We haven't even gotten to the finals. I think there's value on Bucks Lakers exact finals at 4-1. I think there's value on the Bucks to win it all at 3-1. This is a Bucks pro position for me.
You sold me so much that I bet it this morning. I already knew what you were going to say. How about that? So, all right. So before we go to the Western Conference, really quick, obviously you guys just talked about what futures you would be looking at. If you were betting one season win total, whether we talked about it or we didn't, around the table, what is it, Whale?
Ooh. Well, I'm going back in time, and I'm tailing the spread on the current numbers. I don't see much value. I think they've been shaped pretty well because you have smart people like Spread Astaire who were on it like a month ago. So
fair enough. Skee, any season win total that you will pull the trigger on before the start on Thursday?
Are we just talking about the East or West?
Just the East.
Just the East. I still think Philadelphia can hit that number, but I'm probably not going to bet it.
All right, Tyler, Spread.
You guys know I like Philadelphia already. I also like Miami. I know it's going to be tough if they're missing Bam for a couple games, but I have a lot of confidence in Spoelstra and the overall conditioning and chemistry of that team.
T.
I'm not betting it, but the only one I'd be looking at is Orlando over 3.5 at -110. I think they can win 4 games with that easy schedule.
All right, let's move to the West. We know who the heavy hitters are in this conference. Obviously, the Clippers and Skee's Lakers. Now, I know that, we'll get to like the Dallas, Utah, New Orleans win total, but I want to quickly touch on the Lakers Clippers season win totals. Clippers 5.5 right now, over -140, under +105. The Lakers also 5.5, over +120, under -159 on DraftKings around the table. Of the 2 Los Angeles teams in the West, does one of these win totals intrigue you at all, Will?
Yeah, the Clippers under. That under 5.5 at plus money is pretty nice. The Clippers, I don't know if you have looked at their depth chart recently, but there's a heck of a lot of guys that they count on for meaningful minutes who still are not in the bubble. They are going to be in deep trouble on Thursday night in the restart against the Lakers. And at that point, I'm not really 100% sure how much of the load you put on Kawhi Leonard during this 8-game restart. I think, this turns into a very, protect your assets type of 8-game stretch here for the Clippers. Yeah, they're good. Yeah, they should beat a lot of these teams in a neutral setting. But with some of the issues they're having depth-wise, especially, I'm out on them.
Nice. Under Clippers at +105. What about you, Skee? Have you thrown any money on any of these LA win totals? You backing your boys?
Win totals, I haven't, but I mean, if I'm going to bet one, that one sounds awesome. I love the Clippers under. Low management. Why would they stop now? They're just going to reserve themselves for the playoffs. They don't have any chemistry. They're not going to build it in those 8 games. All their players aren't even there. They're just going to, in my opinion, rest the same way they've been resting all season and play the playoffs. So I like that under at plus money.
Spread, you in agreement with the boys?
Yeah, I mean, is it possible to think a team's going to go under for the 8 games and still be bullish on their playoff chances? Because that's how I feel about the Clippers. What we're looking at is a team that really doesn't feel like this regular season matters. We already know, there's going to be no home court advantage. That gives them even less incentive to play. And if any team and any team leader feels like they can flip the switch when they need to, it's the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard. Doc Rivers has been here before. He's not going to push these guys. This is going to be – they're going to treat these 8 games, I feel like, the scrimmage. I feel like under 5.5 is a great look for the season, but I'm still real bullish on their playoff chances here. So I think that they're going to be a very interesting team to fade during the 8-game season. But once the playoff starts, look out, because I'm a Clippers backer.
You guys are getting me excited. Tyler, you agree for the sweep? Under 5.5 plus 105?
The moment Will said that sounded like a winner at plus 105. I mean, we all know how Kawhi plays. That whole team's going to put it on cruise control for these 8 games. Don't be surprised if they go like 2-6 and all of a sudden they roll into that first series and then they look like a completely new team and they sweep whoever they're matched up with. That team can just flip the switch whenever they want. And that defense, I mean, they have the best perimeter defense in the league. You can't. If you screen Kawhi, what are you going to get switched to? Paul George? You screen Paul George, then here comes Pat Beverly. It's like you can't get those guards on the other team aren't going to be able to get away from these guys.
Can you guys hear me?
Hear you now.
All right, cool. All right, Dallas Mavericks comfortably in the playoffs. I think at the very least, they're going to be a 7 seed. They could potentially be a 5 seed, depending on how they play and how poorly, I guess, the Rockets and Thunder would play, right? So the line sits at 4.5 right now. Over plus 110, under minus 140. Skee, we know that the Dallas roster doesn't have a ton of playoff experience, right? We know that, they lean on the Twin Towers because that's really what they have. I mean, if we're being honest. So Porzingis stuck in New York where players go to die. And we know that Luke is really special, but other than playoff experience overseas, he doesn't really have any. So what are your thoughts on the season win total? And are they capable of making a playoff run at all in the West. 4.5 is the win total.
Well, you don't need playoff experience for the regular season. I do think that they can hit their regular season number. They play a couple of soft teams like Phoenix, Sacramento, etc. I don't think it's too much to ask for them to hit that. But in the playoffs, I don't think they do too much. You just said they lack the experience, and it's just too many. The West is too many giants. I don't really think they have a big chance.
Yeah, it makes sense. Same question for you, Will. Do you think a team this inexperienced can make a playoff run? Do you think that they handle the layoff well? And depending on that answer, you target an over or an under for a regular season win total?
I'm targeting it over, and it's cautiously optimistic kind of expectation for them in these playoffs. If this had been a normal, we play out this 82-game season and we roll right into the playoffs, the Mavericks were like at the top of my list of like, I cannot wait to fade these guys.
Right.
Like they were running, Luka was running on fumes, like coming into like February, right? Like how he wasn't going to have anything in April, May, no, nothing. And he, as he goes, this team goes because they're just not deep enough. And, they've lost some important pieces too, it's worth noting. So, their bench is a little thin. They really do count on Luka to do a lot. The interesting thing that I kind of if I'm making a bet on the over, if I'm expecting Luka to do anything, it's because he's had this time off and, he's gotten himself recuperated. And this has almost even been like a mini off season for some of these guys to work on aspects of their game. And so I'm almost feel like this is kind of the third, he's entered both of the last 2 seasons. He starts the season on fire. He has and I think it's his youth, it's his legs. He's got more energy than some of these cagey vets, and I think that is going to propel them specifically to getting to 5 or 6 wins in the restart. And he may even have added things to his game that teams are not prepared for. And they might be they're not a great matchup for a couple of teams in the West. Figuring out the Western Conference playoff picture without knowing the seeding is kind of not really worth. You're going to change your mind 8 times between now and then. Like I could pretty much promise you, because so many of the first round 1 playoff series just depend on who you get matched up against. And I can see with the right luck, the Mavs might be pretty dangerous, or they may be a soft out depending on who they play.
Yeah, we haven't touched on that point. That's a great point, man. These young players have had 4 months to work on their games. So, I mean, we could see a lot of improvement. Just like in fighting, every time these young kids fight, they come in more and more prepared. They look more well-rounded. The same could be said for the NBA. 4 months is a long time to work on your game and get your stuff right. So that's a fair point. Spread, what do you think? Over, under 4.5 wins for the Mavs?
I already played the over. I really like it. A lot of it is the schedule, but the 2 stars is the reason that I'm making this play here. We got Luka and we got Porzingis. The 4 months for Porzingis, maybe not working on his game, but that's 4 more months of the rehab from that ACL injury that took him out in New York. Now he's got pretty much the full time before we see players fully back to their normal self. I think that he really is going to benefit from that, as well as Luka made the great point about how tired he was, playing the grind of the NBA schedule. And Dallas is my team, just like I like Philly in the East. Dallas is kind of my upset wild team that I think can make some noise and make an upset here in the West, just because of the caliber of these 2 stars. Luka, he's top 10, arguably top 5 in the league right now. He's got the extra time to work. Then you bring in Porzingis, who people love and they kind of forgot about now because he's moved to the number 2 option here in Dallas. But this is a great team. They were finally able to find some chemistry. Before, they were taking turns on offense at the beginning of the season. Just, one guy would run the offense for a little while and they would take turns. Then they started to use the pick and roll right before the shutdown, and they started to actually work together as a duo. And I love this duo of Doncic and Porzingis. The only reason I'm not higher on them is the injuries that Whale mentioned there to the wings. They are going to have some problems with wing depth. They're going to be relying on Hardaway Jr., who's a scorer. I don't know if I trust his defense, and Dorian Finney-Smith, who's just basically your average NBA role player. He's going to need to step it up, especially on the defensive end. But I think Dallas has a world of potential. And if anyone can really upset the apple cart and upset one of these big-name teams from Los Angeles, I think it could be the Dallas Mavericks.
Tyler, do you agree? Have you pushed a button on the Mavs over or under 4.5 yet?
I haven't pushed the button yet, but I do agree on the over there. I think, well, based on that schedule and looking at it, they probably beat Houston in that first game. They get the 2 games against Phoenix. They beat Sacramento, so there's 4 right there. Then you have Clippers, Bucks, Jazz, and Portland. The Jazz and Portland game, they can definitely win one of those games, and that gets you there. So, I mean, at that 4.5, I think it's a play. And plus, I think they'll also be trying to dodge the Clippers. And if the Clippers hold that 2 seed, they need to fight to get that 6 seed, because if they are going to make some noise in the playoffs, it's not going to be against one of the LA teams. It's going to have to be against, say, a Denver, a Utah, somebody else. I don't see either of them LA teams losing early in the playoffs.
All right, so there you go. That's the Mavs. Next up, Utah. The shutdown, I guess you can say, really began and ended with the Jazz. We saw the fallout around Rudy Gobert touching microphones. I mean, it was a complete shit show for the Jazz. Then apparently there was like a public falling out between Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. So my question is really chemistry. The current win total, I think, is 4.5 at DraftKings, over plus 120, under a heavy minus 160. Obviously, like Whale said earlier, everybody should line shop and find the absolute best line, no matter what book you're looking for, to find whatever edge you want. Whale, the Jazz, man, can they make a playoff run if chemistry issues aren't a problem? And win total wise, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to back minus 160 to the under, no?
It is. And I'm not, again, I don't think there's enough of an edge. Half wins aren't worth so much that if you can somehow sell that half win to bet the under, I would say that you have a greater edge than just laying the juice. Right. But I think the most likely outcome, given their schedule, given some of the limitations they have with their roster, is 3 and 5. The Jazz benefit substantially from playing at altitude at home. They win a lot of home games. They win a lot of games when teams are on the back-to-back of the altitude double in Denver and in Utah. They get a huge lift from the home crowd. They're not a very good shooting team. They lost one of their better shooters, by the way. One of the guys that can score on this team will not be on the floor for them. And the chemistry issue is real as well. The Jazz, I think, are probably the team that most everyone else in the West is hoping they wind up playing in round 1. I don't think there's really a good matchup for them that gives them a reasonable shot to get a round 1 playoff victory. Their offense just isn't dynamic enough, and Rudy Gobert, as great as you can say he is defensively in terms of protecting the rim, he's a massive liability to have on the floor for against a lot of these other teams in the West that can run fast, that can attack you multiple ways. So I think the Jazz are probably just here for a vacation, and I'm really not interested in any part of them to the over or really having a realistic shot to win the title.
I like it. Skee, the Jazz team, we know, man, they went on huge runs during this season, right? They look unbeatable for a month. Then they fall off a cliff. They do nothing but cost people money. It was a complete roller coaster all year with them, right? So do you stay away from this win total also? I mean, they are pretty inconsistent, so it's hard to know what you're going to get from game to game. 4.5 games. Would you sell that half game, like Whale said, and maybe shoot under 4 at a better price, or is it a complete pass?
I'll sell. I'll go down to 3. I have no faith in the Utah Jazz. Even before Corona, the chemistry was messed up. Yeah. You said it already. They're inconsistent. Mike Conley, they didn't know how to integrate him. I'm not backing the Jazz at all. I think they maybe win the 2 games versus the Spurs. So I don't trust them in the playoffs either. So no and no. I'll take under 3, and they're not doing anything.
He said playoffs. Under 3. What are you getting that at? Like plus 190 under 3? I love it.
Whatever they give it to me.
I love it. All right, T, we found a way to cash on the Jazz, and it was player props. Mitchell assist props, angles, 3-point shots made. We did really well betting on that, but we did not do well backing the team. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
what do you think? You agree? Sell the half game, look for the under?
Sell the half game, sell the game and a half, like Skee said. I mean, this team, they're just in shambles. They're on vacation, like Well said. They have no their best matchup probably would be OKC in the playoffs, and I still don't think they could beat them. This team, I mean, Mitchell's probably down here looking to find a new team to go to next year. That's what I honestly think some of these lower teams are down here for, say like Phoenix and Sacramento, Washington. They're sending their guys Beal, Booker, Fox, go find a new team.
Yeah. What do you think, Spread?
Yeah, I mean, basically what Whale said, lack of home court advantage is going to hurt the Jazz a lot. Bojan Bogdanovic missing is huge for their spacing, and this is a team that already struggled to find space with Gobert on the floor. One thing about the chemistry that I don't think we mentioned yet was this COVID was not the cause of the rift between Mitchell and Gobert. It only exacerbated it because already Gobert felt he should have more usage in the offense. Conley missed a lot of time. Mitchell ran the offense, and they were already bickering and at each other. You could see it on the floor at Gobert feeling that Mitchell did not give him enough looks, and he felt he was getting good post position, and then Mitchell wasn't looking for him at all. So this isn't just from the COVID. And then, of course, you have the COVID on top of it to make it even worse. So, they sound great in their press conferences right now, and they're saying all the right things. But I think within 1, 2, 3 losses, this team could completely implode. I'm not high on Utah at all. And so I already bet the under, and I'll probably be fading them in the first round of the playoffs.
All right, so there you go, guys. Everybody on the under, and they're willing to sell games. That's how much they think of the Utah Jazz. Last one, Pelicans. Tyler and Spread touched on this team, obviously, in a previous video for Run Pure. But I did want to get Whale and Skee's perspective on it. We know, obviously, this team has a ton of potential, right, to be something in a couple of years. Their 3 best players on the team, though, are babies. Zion, Ingram, Lonzo Ball. We know that they still have a ton to learn, no matter how good they are. Zion slimmed down during the pandemic. He looks like LeBron's mini-me now, right? So the books set their season win total pretty high, though. 5.5 games on DraftKings. But they're willing to pay you out for it. Over 5.5 plus 160. Under 5.5 minus 215. So clearly a spot, I would think, where you guys would be selling games again. Well, plus 160. Enough value to even consider this going over 5.5?
Oh, without question. Over. Without question on this one. I think the Pelicans have the absolute perfect mix of easy schedule, youth that has taken a step forward, and motivational edge to put on quite a show. I'm not saying that the NBA is fixed, but if it was, the Pelicans are going to actually leap over the Grizzlies and be the 8th seed and have the Grizzlies go through them to make the playoffs. And we're going to get Pelicans Lakers in round one of the Western Conference playoffs. I don't think I'm alone in hoping, I think every NBA fan, short of, the super duper diehard Lakers skis out there, wants to see Pelicans Lakers round one. And I think the NBA is going to get it to us just based on, they set the schedule up in a way that I thought was reasonably fair for the Pelicans to have a chance because they had the easiest schedule down the home stretch anyway. I think we're going to see the best out of this crew because, youth combined with the pace that they play. I don't see many other teams on their schedule who can hang 130 on them. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys in the restart.
So you think even though they're a couple games back, that on the video that Tyler and Spread made for Run Pure, the play that they gave out actually was for them to make the playoffs, I think, at around 4-1. That number got crushed, though. I think it's down to like plus 250 now. So you think they have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs then?
Yeah, the Grizzlies look bad. The Grizzlies offense looks so out of sorts. I really have no idea how they pull it together and compete and hold on to this 5th spot. I know the gap is big. I know I know that the math is not great, but I think people are undercounting the likelihood that the Pelicans actually jump them and are the 8th seed, and then the Grizzlies have to come and win 2 games against them. It's going to be if they end up in the 9, they're going to have a tough time winning 2 games in a row. Like, that's just difficult. But you're probably going to get a money line in that. You're probably going to get Pelicans -5 in that first game, and then the second game maybe Pelicans -4 unless they absolutely blow them out. And so, parlaying your money line, you're still not going to get better than +250. So it's worth the play, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Pelicans outside shot to make the playoffs, Skee, right? Obviously, we know that at the plus money. If they're going to make the playoffs, though, they need to get over this season win total almost certainly. So 5.5 at +160 to the over. Is that a buy on for you?
It's done. They're making it. It's been my favorite look.
I love
all
the
looks.
confidence. I love it.
They have the easiest schedule, like we already said. If they play Memphis, they don't have very many shooters. And Pelicans are going to destroy them because Pelicans can defend the perimeter extremely well. So once they do that, Memphis is done. And like we already talked about the schedule. And you talked about a team that had a stretch of good games. The Pelicans went on a great run. And what was the reason for the run? Because they were finally healthy. They had everybody playing at the same time for once. And what do they have now? Everybody healthy. So I'm expecting the Pelicans to play good basketball. I'm expecting them to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, Tyler spread. I know you guys already bet them to make the playoffs. I assume you're just double up on over 5.5 at +160.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason you're seeing that +160 is the books need under money. I mean, I think that's the reason why they've moved it. They're trying to grab some sort of things to balance their books there. I think that everybody's on the Pelicans. I don't think this is going to be a big surprise or some breaking news when we release this video here that we like the Pelicans as well. And just one thing I like to say about this team that makes it so much fun is that I think that Lonzo Ball is almost a perfect point guard there for Zion Williamson. He's a guy that looks to distribute first. He loves throwing the lob, putting Zion in great positions to score and use his supreme athleticism. So I'm looking forward to really watching this team. I hope they make it as a fan and as a bettor. I think the Lakers-Pelicans first-round series will be must-see TV. I'd love to see Ingram, Lonzo, and Josh Hart go against their old teammates there. And I'm really high on this Pelicans team, just like the rest of the panel.
You second that, T?
Oh, of course. You already know I'm high on the Pelicans. They gave them that cupcake schedule. They're going to walk right into that 8th seed. Just like Will said, I wouldn't be surprised if Memphis is coming to play them twice for that play-in game.
Yeah. All right, so the Western Conference Championship futures market, obviously we know heavily weighted towards both LA teams. The Lakers +150 to win the West, Clippers +180 to win the West. So I guess the question is, do you guys see value in taking one of these LA teams to win the Western Conference, or are you so bullish on LA teams that you think you take both of them and try to scrape a half unit or a little less than a full unit by taking the Clippers and the Lakers? So, I mean, around the room, well, what are your thoughts on the 2 favorites in the Western Conference market?
The only action I have on the 2 favorites, I have an exact matchup, Bucks Lakers at 4-1, that I think is pretty nice coverage. I don't think it is really all that controversial to say that LeBron James is the best player in the Western Conference. Not only just in general, but especially right now. Like, he is absolutely looks like he is in top shape. And he is going to be a terrible matchup for any other team in the West. And he knows, he has the experience of playoff basketball to really kind of get it done in crunch time. And I think a lot of these Western Conference, series, a lot of them look like 6-7 games. A lot of them look like last possession type of basketball. And so I'm happy kind of being on board with the guy who's the most experienced and has kind of the greatest tool set. That said, I think the Lakers have been overbet like crazy to win the West. Like, that number does not reflect reality. Like, it is much more wide open than that. Right. Same with the Clippers, for that matter. I think, both teams, at least by the market, I think both teams are relatively overrated. I think it's fair to take a shot on the likes of the Nuggets. I think it's fair to consider the Rockets, but in the back of my head, I have this sneaking suspicion that the Rockets might, stumble their way into the 7th seed and get drawn in the Clippers round 1. Which would absolutely murder you from a number standpoint. If you have to go through Clippers in round 1 and you have a Rockets to win the West at whatever it is, 8-1. But I think there is value, notably on Nuggets, notably on Thunder, just from a number standpoint, to win the Western Conference. It's just you kind of need the right matchups. And you're kind of looking for the team that meets the Lakers in the finals if it's not the Clippers. And you want a nice big fat ticket so that you can kind of have both sides there. That's kind of my strategy in general.
Yeah, I like that because, I'm already in agreement with you that the Bucks run through the East probably. So at that point, if you don't really consider that a risk, you're basically getting the Lakers at 4-1. Rather than taking that shot at plus 150. I think it's a little cheap too, personally, based on, the fair representation of their chances. So, Skee, would you consider taking one or both LA teams to scrape? Or do you like Whale said, any long shots at dog money?
I definitely would not take both because it's already small odds for the Lakers. You won't really win much.
Right.
And I'll just say first, I'll talk about a long shot. I don't think Houston has a chance at all. I'll say that first. Russell Westbrook, he's not a winner. Harden's not a winner. D'Antoni's not a winner. I'm not buying Rockets. Nuggets, what I said earlier in the show, what I'm looking for is chemistry. Nuggets, their team that's been together a few years, a team that's been trying to make that next push forward. Why couldn't it be in this shortened season when chemistry matters most, in my opinion? So I think if there's any team that I'm taking a shot on in the West, it will be Denver. Outside of that, the next team with the chemistry, it will be Lakers. I think you just take the Lakers to win. If you think there's value on the Bucks minus 150, there's value on the Lakers plus 150, even though it's a short number. The Lakers are going to come out the West. I'm pretty confident about it. People question, Lakers lost Avery Bradley. They're going to miss him on defense. My opinion, yeah, they missed him on defense, but I think the Lakers got better. Where the Lakers also missing, we're missing playmaking. We're missing somebody who create their own shot, somebody who can knock down an open shot. And what do we get? The 13th all-time leading three-point shooter, J.R. Smith. We got Dion Waiters, who can go get a bucket.
Hold on.
Hey.
Are you talking up J.R. Smith right now?
He just went 6 for 7 in a scrimmage game. He's the 13th all-time leading three-point shooter. Y'all got to put some respect on J.R.'s name. He's throwing lobs to Dwight. The chemistry is so good. The chemistry is off for the Clippers. They so off. I don't see how you could think the Clippers come into the playoffs and just roll the Lakers the way that the Lakers are looking and playing. Lakers needed scoring. They needed a playmaker. When LeBron, people say, who's going to do what when LeBron's off the floor? We needed a guy like Dion. We needed a guy like JR who can create their own shot, who don't need everything set up for them. So I like our chances a lot. Watching them play with the scrimmage games, I like them even more. Give me the Lakers to win the West.
So you still think that there's odds at plus 150? Because I will probably do what Whale did. I like that at 4-1 for the exact matchup in the finals. But you're saying that, you put the stamp of approval on riding them at plus 150 to win the West.
I am confident that the Lakers are coming out of the West, yes.
Okay.
The problem though is there's a reality where they have to go through Pelicans and then somebody else, Pelicans, Rockets, Clippers on their way to get there. And I think you're probably going to get better numbers parlaying those series with the Lakers than you're going to get plus 150.
I'll be honest with you. I'm just talking about who's going to win. Plus 150 to win. If you can take a minus 150, you can take a plus 150. And the only team I'm honestly worried about to beat the Lakers, they might not even be in the playoffs. It's the Blazers.
Wow.
I want, full transparency. Everything that was just said, was done by a person wearing a Los Angeles Lakers t-shirt. I just want to throw that out there. All right. Fair enough, man. Spread, what do you think? One of the LA teams, or are you throwing lunch money long?
So, yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm getting ready to make a case for the Houston Rockets. And in the chat, I'm seeing that Eric Gordon could be injured, which is terrible. But let's just assume he's okay. And I'm going to go ahead and make a case for Houston here at 7 or 8 to 1. And my idea here is that James Harden, if we take defense out and we're just looking at offense, arguably the best player in the league. I think he's the best scorer in the league. So you have that going for you. They have the small lineup, which is tough for other teams to match up with. We saw the Lakers had problems when the Houston first made their trade of Capella and went in with this all 6'6" and under lineup. It can cause problems for teams that like to run big. We know Anthony Davis does not like to play center. He's going to have to against this Houston squad get these Lakers uncomfortable. I think they got a great chance for the upset, but they're going to need Eric Gordon. You guys already know, I'd mentioned it earlier, I also think Dallas has got a great upset chance, but not enough to make the finals. I think they might be able to take one team out, but I can't see them doing it 3 times in a row. So I did like Houston here. Let's wait and see what's going on with Eric Gordon. But I think Houston's got the idea and got the team to maybe throw a wrench in either of the LA team's plans.
Tyler, are you on the chalk, or you like the long shots here?
I wouldn't touch any of these long shots with a free bet. This is one of the LA teams, or there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The more I look at it, I think it's going to be the Lakers. The only way I think they really lose is if Anthony Davis goes down with an injury, which we've seen him go down about every 2 weeks. So, I mean, I like the guarantee money. I'd probably just take them both and scrape the profit.
Okay. All right. So that's the Western Conference look. Before I let you go, boys, just your thoughts on who wins it all. Right now, Lakers are the favorite at plus 250. The Bucks at plus 250. Well, I like what you're doing at 4 to 1, taking them both just to make the finals. That's probably where I'll go and stay away from the NBA championship market. But if you did not have that bet, is there anything that you would be looking on as far as value to win it all?
I do think there's value in the Bucks only because their path is so much easier than everyone in the West. I mean, we made a case that, like, yeah, the Lakers. Skee's your point was fair, Skee. Like, you don't see it as 40% chance they win the West. You see it as 99.9 or whatever, right? And yeah, sure, there's value there if that's your opinion. But the reality is that they're going to have some tough series potentially. We're expecting the Pelicans in round 1. That's a 5-6 game series. It's going to be tough. They're going to get run up and down that floor. Right, like that's going to be serious, miles spent. Similarly, with round 2, they're going to draw somebody tough, and then potentially get the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. They're going to play a lot more games, in my opinion, than the Bucks are to get there, which means that you potentially have a pretty sizable fatigue advantage when you get to the finals if you're the Bucks. And I'll say, I guess my final prediction though then is the Giannis takes the crown, and clearly 2 MVPs and a bubble championship becomes the clear best player in the NBA after this restart.
Skee, Lakers plus 250 auto play.
That's my bet. You know it. You can't win the finals without a jump shot. Give me the Lakers.
There you go. Tyler, spread, any value to win it all?
Probably just take a shot on both the LA teams, maybe a long shot on Toronto. I think they still have the guys to win it. Nick Nurse made me eat every word I said about him last year. I didn't think that team could do it. In every game, they made me eat it until the last game when they finally won it. I was like, yeah, I guess they can do it. But other than that, I mean, those top 3 teams should just run away with it. One of those 3 should win.
Spread, put a bow on it.
All right, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pick the Clippers to win the title. I'm looking at Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, 2 of the best defensive players in the league. I think when it comes down to it, Whale talked about, these are going to be 1-possession games. It's going to come down to it. Who are you going to rely on to get a bucket? But conversely, who are you going to rely on to get a stop? I love the idea that I can rotate Leonard and George around and get the stops that I need to against this Los Angeles team. I know we need Harrell back here if this bet's going to go through to go ahead and match up with Davis here. But I think that the Clippers have the advantage in defense, depth, and coaching. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Clippers to win the NBA title.
All right, there you go. That's all, gentlemen. I appreciate Skee and Whale coming on the show, man. I think the most of the both of you, so I really do appreciate it. You can find Skee at Skee Profit on Twitter. Everybody knows he's one of Wager Talk's best handicappers. Follow him over there. Well, your deep dive podcast, man, is must listen. I listen to it every time you put an episode out. You can find him at whale_capper. And then obviously Tyler and Spread, you guys can find at Run Pure Bets and the Sports Keg Twitter handle. So I really appreciate you guys coming on, man. Thanks.
Hey, for everyone who tuned in this whole time, you stayed till the end of the show. You want a free $50? Go to a certain offshore sports book that has NBA specials. Over 5.5 players kneel in the Jazz Pelicans game is -165. That is 100% lock, no doubt.
That
every
is
player every player on the
kind
floor is going to be kneeling. That is like one of the silliest. It's just it's free money. Like they're just trying to get you to have a good time. Free $50.
That's
go take over 5.5 players.
That's the kind of info you get here. Okay, that's I mean, we got angles for days. So I love it, man. I love it. I'll look for that prop because that's an automatic moneymaker.
I'd sell that to over 24.5. Every single player.
And the coaching staff. Everybody's going down. I love it. But no, seriously, I really appreciate Will and Skee coming on. You guys are the best, man.
Yep. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. I love rocking with you guys. It's been a pleasure.
All right, boys, we're out. We will see you on Thursday night for the live betting show. Bet a couple NBA games. We'll see how it goes. Until then,